Now, there's one particular interview with an astronaut. This is Buzz Aldrin that I was very interested in. So this is Bart Sibrel, the chap who made the film Astronauts Gone Wild. And my opinion on that interview is that it's very telling, because I felt that Buzz Aldrin was almost admitting to something in that interview. What were your feelings on it, Andrew?
Yes, it does seem like he was trying to pass the buck to somebody else. He says, you should go and talk to the NASA administrator. We were just guys going on a flight. He didn't really seem to be that interested in saying, oh yeah, we definitely went, and this is how we prove it. He didn't really come back with any of that. And he sort of quickly went into the more personal attacks, and saying that Bart Sibrel was on an ego trip or something. And so, again, people should watch that interview as well as, watching what you're going to show next. Right.
Yeah. So, again, the Buzz Aldrin interview, you can download the analysis from the website. And I did think it was going to throw up more than it did. But essentially what Peter Hyatt points out is that Bart Sibrel asks Buzz Aldrin a very, very difficult question. In fact, it's not a question. He makes a statement. He says, I know you didn't walk on the moon. And what Peter Hyatt says, well, that was the end of the interview. Buzz Aldrin was not going to give any more information or entertain the guy. He was just trying to get him out of his office from that point. As soon as he's made that accusation, Peter Hyatt saying, end of interview, you're not going to get any more useful information out of him. So Peter Hyatt describes it as a missed opportunity. But I would be sympathetic with Bart Sibrel in as much as it's clearly a very emotional subject for him. He's convinced that he's been lied to, and he's got the man in front of him there. And to be cool and calm and collected and analytical in these situations is perhaps not as easy as it sounds.
It's very difficult, yeah. And I mean, both you and I think we originally thought the Apollo missions were real, and I was personally very upset when I realised that they couldn't have been real. So,
but certainly the Buzz Aldrin analysis, there's nothing in there to indicate that he went to the moon.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But it doesn't go as far as perhaps as the Neil. It's not as revealing as the Neil Armstrong one. But one thing that, in order to get Peter Hyatt to do the analysis, you have to do a transcript. Every word you've got to put into a document, and it's in a room with
not very good acoustics.
Yeah, the acoustics aren't perfect. So there was a great deal of information in the language. I had to replay several sections over and over again to figure out what the words were, and a lot more comes out in it. So if you read the subtitles and see what Bart Sibrel is actually saying to him and what Aldrin is replying. So to set the scene, Bart Sibrel, who was very sceptical of the Apollo missions, he doesn't believe they went to the moon. He manages to get in front of Buzz Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin doesn't really know he's going to be challenged. He just knows it's some media interview. And then Bart Sibrel produces this very damning piece of evidence, this tape of them faking the shot of the Earth out the window to make the Earth look further away. And you can see Buzz Aldrin's reaction to that. He's stunned by it because he doesn't know it's in the public domain, and he starts asking him how he's got a hold of it.
That's right, and that film is in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. That clip is shown in bits in Astronauts Gone Wild, but if they want to see the whole clip, that's in the other film of Bart Sibrel's, which is A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon.
Before I show the analysis, just a quick word about Bart Sibrel. I highly recommend watching his films, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon and Astronauts Gone Wild. In researching and making these films, Bart Sibrel has showed great resourcefulness and courage in bringing to light new information about the validity of the Apollo missions and shining a light on the astronauts involved. So I would like to thank him for all his hard work. Now, I sent professional statement analyst Peter Hyatt a transcript of Bart Sibrel's Buzz Aldrin interview with the intention of finding out from Buzz Aldrin's own words whether he was lying and what might be being concealed. In doing the analysis, Peter also analyses Bart Sibrel's words and his interview technique. Peter compares Bart's interaction with Buzz Aldrin with how a professionally trained statement analyst would conduct such an interview. In doing this, he is very critical of Bart Sibrel. I just want to point out that my intention in having this interview analysed was to find out about Buzz Aldrin and what his language reveals, not necessarily to be critical of Bart Sibrel. So please don't take the comments too personally, Bart. I think you achieved a great deal just by managing to get a camera in front of Buzz Aldrin and all the other astronauts and challenge them while they were on camera. Anyway, here's the analysis.
I mean, do you have Neil Armstrong interviewed already?
The interview begins with the subject posing a question about his flight team member. Please consider this is a possible defensive posture on the part of the subject. In a prior interview, there was a linguistic reluctance to commit to information about the lunar landing. The analysis of that interview concluded that this could be from a number of reasons with two dominant themes. 1. The subject did not experience lunar landing. 2. The subject did experience lunar landing but was under strict orders to not disclose information about such as part of national security. Consider that either point would lead to passivity as part of a weak linguistic commitment. Here we may consider that the subject, Aldrin, does not wish to be psychologically alone with the possible disclosure of classified information. It could be classified due to military necessity, whether it was a military form of deception to cause other nations to believe the United States held technological advantage or not, the language would be the same. An example of this is found in medical privacy laws and statutes. Not only are medical professionals bound by confidentiality, but the consequences of such will impact language. This is true of any profession in which effort must be made to conceal information.
No, he doesn't want to be interviewed.
Well, I know.
The subject recognizes that the member of his team does not want to be interviewed. Please consider the possibility that before the interview begins, our subject does not wish to be interviewed either. This is not lost on the interviewer.
Why does he not give interviews?
The question is specifically seeking why the reluctance to give information exists.
Well, because that's his personal choice. And I guess it's mine, in a way, to do things when they've been researched and worked out as far as a business arrangement. This is not news. This is not an anniversary.
1. The subject does not refute reluctance. 2. The subject reports that the choice to not want to give an interview is a personal choice. He does not say, "I don't know," and "you will have to ask him," but tells us in an unnecessary statement. By calling it his personal choice, any choice to not want to give an interview would be personal. This is therefore unnecessary to state, making it very important information. He does not say, "That's his choice," but gives us additional information by the word personal. The subject introduces this as a personal choice, which then can be asked, what other choice would there be? A professional choice? A legal choice? A professional choice could be one in which payment is part of the equation. A legal choice would be a choice based upon possible legal ramifications regarding the information of an interview. By telling us it is his personal choice, the subject is inadvertently raising questions as to the possibility of other elements of choice and restriction. This should have led to a journalist to consider a question such as, would he be under any restrictions to discuss this in some form? The topic should be explored. That the subject may be himself concerned about this is to be considered. Now we are given affirmation that personal choice has introduced other options or choices for the subject. First, he makes a weak commitment to this with "I guess." Next, he takes ownership of his choice with "mine." Then he qualifies this unnecessary freedom of choice by qualifying it with "in a way." The reader or analyst should now consider why reluctance is part of the interview. At the date of this interview, our subject is uncertain as to what he may or may not be free to say. This is to strongly suggest that there was a time when the subject and his team member were not free to choose to disclose information via interviews. This is consistent with the analysis of the prior interview. What is it that causes this reluctance? Here he introduces business arrangement, which may relate to professional choice, where he is paid for the information. We should now consider the topic of business as on his mind, yet the next sentence also shows some reluctance. 1. He reports in the negative what is not. This elevates the topic in importance. 2. He tells us that this is not news. 3. And it is not an anniversary. We note that news comes before anniversary. If he reported that it was not an anniversary, it may suggest that he does not see the need for an interview. We would wonder, however, why our subject would consider only an anniversary as to be the reason for an interview. This is not news. In the negative, the subject affirms what the interview is not, i.e. news. There are 2 points within statement analysis that elevate this sentence. A, this is an unnecessary statement. B, it is given in the negative. With these 2 elements, the subject himself has led us to wonder, is this news? By asserting to a journalist or interviewer that it is not news, while not as a result of a direct question, this statement is very important to the subject. Why? The subject indicates a reluctant or defensive posture. The interviewer recognizes this and compares it to what he has via the word actually.
Well, actually it is. We found a very unique reel of footage that we have queued up to show you.
Yeah.
The subject only acknowledges this with yeah, offering no comment, no question. He has told the interviewer that it is not news, and it is not the anniversary, which questions the reason for the interview. He has been answered, but offers no reply beyond agreement.
And it's from the mission, and to our knowledge, no one has ever seen it before. And it's 30 years old.
Consider that the subject is reluctant to share information, which increases his defensive posture, and upon being given further information by the interviewer, thus showing him that it is in fact news, the subject responds to the statement with a question.
And you want me to see this while you have me on camera?
We have confirmation that the subject's concern is exposure of information from him to the public. Note that while speaks to the element of time, not content. This suggests that the subject may have preferred being shown in private, that is, off camera. He was asked to tell us what it is and answered with a question about being on camera. Therefore, being asked about something related to his work that he is not aware of has increased his sensitivity to the topic. It is important to consider that under general or normal conditions in any profession, the topic of what the footage is would elicit a question or comment rather than the timing of such. Our subject is concerned about privacy or confidentiality. He has answered via a question telling us that the topic is very sensitive to him.
Well, and to tell us what it is.
This is an unnecessary statement.
I mean, it's...
Well, I don't know why I should do that.
Any professional who is free to talk about his profession would likely ask about the content of the footage, perhaps even with great interest given how it was introduced. For the subject, it provoked a question about disclosure, and here it produced an interruption, not about the material itself. We must now consider this in light of the weak assertion, I guess, of the subject's choice to allow an interview. He reports in a statement what he does not know. He began with a pause, well, and tells us what he does not know. He does not report ignorance of the topic, but of his choice. This has caused a considerable increase in tension for the subject, the unknown footage. The tension is not related to what the subject may or may not know, but it created the increase in tension regarding the reason why he would speak specifically on camera. We now have confirmation about the sensitivity of personal choice, as the subject indicates that he may not have personal choice to comment on what he has not seen yet. Note the language that follows. Not only does he interrupt the interviewer, but specifically shows us the indicators of tension.
It's a very unique footage.
What would be very unique would be only to the public, not to an eyewitness who was there.
Maybe that I need to see it, and then we sit down and we talk about what you're taking a picture of. I don't see where there's an advantage in it for me to do what you're asking me to do. I see all sorts of pitfalls. I see people who have managed to talk to somebody. Who did you talk to in our office?
The subject begins with a pause, well, indicating a need to think for answers. The subject acknowledges that it may be that the interviewer has very unique, never-seen-before footage. This is to affirm the possibility of such existence. He then weighs this possibility via the comparison but with his need. The pronouns here must be followed, but I need to see it. Without disputing the existence of very unique footage, the subject makes a very strong statement, I need to see it, without qualification. Here he does not use I guess or an exercise of personal choice. This is very important to him. It is not, however, all that he must have. But I need to see it, and then we sit down and we talk about it. And then is the passage of time. Not only does this choice of wording reveal his need to see it, but there will be time for him to process the information. We sit down is to A, reveal tension, body posture, sitting down, B, demand for unity, that this unity will only come after he himself has viewed what the interviewer has. And C, and we talk about it, is to repeat the emphasis on unity. Question, what might be the pause of time here? Answer, the subject must be convinced that he himself has the cooperation, unity of the interviewer. He did not say, and then we talk about it, but said, we sit down, and we, which is an unnecessary emphasis on unity, talk about it. Before they talk about it, they will sit down. This slows down the pace, increases tension, and tells us that the subject will not disclose information or even continue the interview until the subject is convinced that there is unity, agreement between himself and the interviewer. And then we sit down and we talk about it. Next, we now see why he could only guess about personal choice. I don't see where there's an advantage, pause, in it for me to do what you're asking me to do. This breaks the unity of we and now goes back to I, in which he reports what he does not see. He does not see the advantage. Then there is a pause, which signals increase in sensitivity in the need for more consideration, where he adds, for me. The subject has turned this back on himself. Recall he referenced the element of time, but not the topic. Now he introduces advantage for himself. Question, is the subject disagreeing because he is not being paid? Here the subject acknowledges that he has knowledge that people have gained access to somebody. That these people have managed suggests considerable effort and success. This may be due to various reasons, including A, a difficulty in identifying those in authority, or B, managing through barriers to actually talk to one in authority. Not only does this sentence tell us that it is so challenging to get through to authority, but that our subject wants to know the name of the official that the interviewer talked to. This now answers the question as to why there is reluctance. It is not due to money, but requires somebody from our office to be notified. Our subject needs some sort of permission to speak freely in the interview, even after the lengthy passage of time.
I talked with Heather at Tor Books.
Yeah, but is this helping book promotion? Are you going to be putting anything out during the time that I'm marketing books?
The subject asked a direct question that the interviewer did not answer regarding helping book promotion. The subject then asked another question that specifically called for an answer of what he himself would be marketing. The interviewer did not answer. Regardless of the topic, that is a breach of trust. The interviewer is seeking information but will not provide information. This will always put the interviewee into a defensive posture. Consider that this is the third element of defensive posture for the subject. 1. Professional payment. 2. Permission from his office. 3. Lack of unity and trust between the interviewer and the subject.
So Heather does not represent me for the things you're talking about. She represents a book selling activity.
He speaks directly about publicity and representation, but not about any permission or confidentiality issues. The refusal to answer has likely settled the subject into his already established defensive posture. It is a significant mistake in journalism. The subject, via answering questions, is vulnerable and now trust is broken.
I think when you see the footage, you'll see that it's
Wow.
very extraordinary, one of a kind,
Okay.
behind the scenes type
Yeah.
of footage.
Yeah. Well, if it is, why do you have access to something that no one else has seen before?
He now turns into the interviewer. Trust is broken as he challenges the interviewer, not with how, but why. This reduces sensitivity towards the footage down and sensitivity personally towards the interviewer upward.
Serendipity, I guess. And it was recorded on the 18th
Of what?
of July, 1969.
Apollo 11, Houston, Goldstone says that the TV looks great. Over.
Do you remember this?
The 18th?
Sure. Okay, Roger.
Aldrin watches the footage. The footage shows the Earth filmed from within the Apollo 11 spacecraft at a time when the mission was supposed to be halfway to the moon. The footage shows the astronauts filming the Earth from the back of the spacecraft through a circular window a number of feet away. It is claimed they are using a crescent-shaped insert in the circular window in order to mimic the Earth's terminator, the line between day and night, so that the Earth appears to be much further away than it actually was. The lights are turned out within the spacecraft, making the space within the spacecraft indistinguishable from the space outside the spacecraft surrounding the Earth. Sibrel believes Apollo 11 was in a low Earth orbit for the duration of the mission, and these shots were being made by the astronauts to possibly be used to convince the public that Apollo 11 was on its journey to the moon. The final shot shows Michael Collins with the Earth outside the window looking very large, indicating Apollo 11 probably was in a low Earth orbit at this time.
Hello, Apollo 11, Houston, Goldstone says that the TV looks great. Over. Sure. Okay, Roger, Roger, Neil, we just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get the playback, we can sort of correlate what we were saying. Thank you very much.
Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number one window, and there isn't any reflected light. We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera. South America becomes invisible just off beyond the terminator or inside the shadow. We can see the oceans with a definite blue cast, see white bands of major cloud formations across the Earth.
Roger, the ATC is working real well. The F-22 looks good. Over. Hello, Apollo 11, Houston, did you copy? Over.
Roger, we copied that, Charlie.
Roger, your transmissions the last couple of times have been about 2 by. Over.
Okay, how do you read me now?
Right, you're 5 by now.
Coastline.
Now we're coming in. Can't quite make out who that is.
What is your proposition? That we didn't go to the moon?
In effect, the interview ended when the interviewer betrayed the subject by his silence. It now turns into a challenge and the opportunity is lost.
I know for a fact that you did.
This is a critical mistake on top of a critical mistake. Here, he could have presented the topic as doubt, not as for fact, which technically weakens the assertion while increasing the challenge personally to the subject. This challenge, which should have been avoided, was not expected by the subject. Journalists seek information by trade, not press narrative. This is how to lose a subject.
I know for a fact that you did not.
You know for a fact that we did not.
The topic is very sensitive to our subject. In parroting back the words, A, the subject retorts in question form, and B, changes the pronoun you to we in the answer. This suggests that the defensive posture is not only high, but it is now something in which the subject does not wish to be alone psychologically with. The subject does not want to be accused of not going by himself, but as a team with others.
That's correct, and you'll see this tape proves that.
Foolishness compounded. The interviewer ended the interview, not the subject and not the topic.
Okay, well, I'm not interested in satisfying your suppositions when there's all this evidence that we did.
This is an unexpected and weak assertion. It goes to evidence. This is a subtle form of distancing language. When one experiences something personally, particularly something that is dramatic or historic, the expected language will always be his personal experience. The subject will not have need for nor interest in evidence. This is the psychological wall of truth that shows itself strongly in language. It is not here.
This proves, as you see, that you're using the window to demonstrate that you were halfway to the moon when you were
Turn the camera off, please. Turn the camera off. You're full of shit.
It is personal. This is why an interviewer must never break trust with the subject. He could have said, "I would like to learn, and I would like to write the truth in a book, and I am open to learn about this footage." Instead, he presented it in the form of an accusation. Note that the subject had previously used the pronoun we to describe them. Even though it was in increased tension, it was still unity. The topic did not break the unity. The subject himself did not break the unity.
That you're in Earth orbit. Now, if the moon was 3 days away, and this is late, on the 18th, how could you possibly walk on the moon 2 days later when this was shot on the 18th?
You want me to sit in front of a camera while you're taking pictures, you're showing this, and then you want to see my reaction?
This is a challenge that could have been diffused with honesty. Yes, this way we can learn from you, or anything similar. By repeating the word fact, the interviewer only increases the resistance of the subject.
I know for a fact
that's slimy journalism. Do you realize that?
If
You ought to be ashamed of
If you read the
yourself.
document that I have in here, you'll find that it's not. That this is a personal plea to do what is right.
Virtue signaling is also insulting, which only increases the resistance. This is a very poorly conducted interview. By using personal plea, however, he got the subject's attention, who turns back into his earlier offer.
Well, we sit and we talk about things ahead of time.
Analytical Interviewing Rule 101. Do not interrupt the subject. It is likely that the lack of trust could have been repaired by reviewing the material off camera. This should have been agreed to, as it is disarming and would have allowed the interviewer to get information one way or another. The interviewer shows that he is not interested in the truth, but in pushing his narrative.
Document that you want to see. I know for a fact.
The interviewer's own weakness continues in his repetition of fact.
But what it is you're trying to do is unethical. You don't believe that?
The subject asked the interviewer a question and the interviewer refused to answer. The subject asked the interviewer a second question, of which he was refused. The subject now introduces ethics.
No, I do not.
Then we have a difference of opinion.
This is where you're using the window of the spacecraft to appear to be the Earth far away. We got the raw footage of it. We have an auxiliary track, so in prompting you when to speak.
You believe in UFOs?
No,
You
I do
believe
not.
we've been visited by... Well, why do
No, I
you want
don't.
to believe this stuff?
The need to ridicule the interviewer suggests the sensitivity of the information. Unfortunately, the interviewer made sure that the sensitivity to the information would not be addressed.
I know for a fact, we've had this analyzed, and this is the window, and it's dated by an atomic clock at the Goldstone tracking station, which is on the tape.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight. We're not...
A. Question form is regarding authority. B. Sentence in the present tense is unreliable. C. He was about to tell us in the negative, we're not, but it will not be known because the interviewer interrupted the subject.
I know for a fact that it didn't. And this tape would prove it in a court of law.
Subsequently, this
It would.
tape was never used.
Why don't you try? Why don't you put your money into a court of law and see how people laugh at you? You want it...
No one is
Is your
laughing.
camera working?
The subject is concerned about how he will come off on camera. This is the result of not only sensitive information, but broken trust personally. The subject likely is concerned that the journalist who has condemned him will wish to portray him personally as one in guilt.
No one has laughed.
It is likely that the journalist has been laughed at.
And this makes you the real famous person that has discovered this and reveals all this stuff. What an ego you must have to want to propel yourself like this.
The wording used by the subject here, while attempting to insult, reveals sensitivity towards the topic, not only the interviewer. This is why accusations should be made reluctantly, only when absolutely necessary and without morals.
That's not why I'm doing it, and God knows that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for the truth to come out because I think it was wrong.
The self-justification is another mistake for a journalist. This has set up disparity. The journalist knows right from wrong, and the subject is wrong. There is no unity in this, and the information now greatly hindered as it turns personal, to condemn the journalist and defend self. It moves emotion away from the topic, which would have granted the most yield, and towards personal justification. Doing it for the truth is a positive, but because I think it is wrong, whether accurate or not, condemns the subject as the wrongdoer, and pushes him into an even greater defensive posture. This will lead him to defend himself rather than the mission or any details of the mission. The journalist increases the personal pressure, which then causes us to view any sensitive reaction in the same way. One is wrong and has to defend himself, so he is not wrong, but the interviewer is wrong. While this is being done, valuable potential information is lost.
You can also notice how the astronaut...
But you're doing it the wrong way. You don't mislead somebody like me to come in here.
The subject addresses the betrayal. Aldrin was told he was wrong and now tells the journalist that the journalist is wrong. Note the self-importance. Somebody like me follows the ridicule of the journalist becoming famous in discovery. We might have gotten some insight into the topic discovered had the journalist not made this personal, good guy versus bad guy. Far better would be to allow the subject to see the material and know what it is about and to decline to discuss it, only to be asked why he had a need not to discuss, including asking, are there any military reasons in some form? By setting up an adversarial relationship, the journalist lost the opportunity.
You didn't go to the moon. That's misleading people. I'm showing you this
Okay,
tape.
we went to the moon. We're not misleading anybody.
This is not a strong assertion because A, it is parroted language, which reduces the element of internal stress if he was being deceptive, and B, it did not use the pronoun I as expected in a most personal historic event. It is unreliable as it stands.
Then how is it possible that this is the window it's shot to make it look like...
Look, you can manufacture all you want with.
This is a weak accusation, but we cannot conclude it is from the content. This is why making it personal through virtue signaling and condemning the subject loses the opportunity for information, including information gleaned specifically through the lens of statement analysis.
This is straight. This isn't manufactured. And you know that it
To
isn't.
that of an interior of the astronauts at work.
I believe this would prove it in a court of law that you did not go to the moon. It's dated on the 18th. It proves when you remove the
You
crystal.
give me your
Here's
business
the light.
card.
It's all in there.
Camera controls.
It's all
But
in there.
not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert.
This proves that it's the window. You can see them removing the crescent insert that you did to create the Terminator line in front of
You're
the
so
window.
full of shit, I can't believe it.
Earth orbit.
If you show this publicly, you're open for a lawsuit. Okay?
Again, it's personal. So the conclusions are, the journalist did not glean information on the topic due to the fault of the journalist alone. The subject was placed in a personally accusatory defensive posture while being interviewed on a sensitive topic. It was the sensitivity around the topic that would have given us insight. The journalist instead guided the subject to avoid the topic and defend himself and attack the journalist. The lens of statement analysis allows for us to discern not only truth from deception, but content analysis. Had the journalist not made such accusations nor used morally charged language, he would have gotten information from the subject. Whether the subject never went to the moon, or if he did and is not permitted to speak about it from authorities, i.e. military, information could have been gleaned had the journalist remained open and unified with the subject. He did not. In the interview, the subject has the information. Each interruption lost information. Where there is a time for accusation is only at the end of an interview or when the subject refuses to answer. Viewing the subject's use of the pronoun we, the subject was, at the least, willing to speak off camera to learn what would be asked on camera. This would have been valuable information. Even if an agreement was reached before the camera was turned on, the journalist would have allowed for some information to be presented for analysis. The journalist's primary motive, according to his language, was not obtaining information. His repetition of the word fact showed increased sensitivity for the journalist himself. He has likely an acute need here for self-justification that would have been addressed in formal training. As interviewers, we allow subjects to condemn us if they wish, as long as they keep talking about the topic in hand. It is likely that the journalist, due to his own fault and perhaps from being personally accused of holding to a conspiracy theory, felt the need for self-justification and allowed it to overrule his effort to obtain information. The topic is very sensitive to both parties. One showed a strong need for avoidance, while the journalist possesses a strong need to prove his belief. In any interview, the interviewer will get one of two impressions. Either the subject is working with them to facilitate the flow of information, or he is working against the interview to hinder it. Buzz Aldrin began with a defensive posture. He introduced payment, representation, but also the sensitive topic of authority. Our subject was acutely aware of the need, even years later, for official permission to speak freely. This is in fact something that did come out of this interview as part of the analysis conclusion. Aldrin does need permission to freely choose to share information about a mission many years prior. This is evident from his words regarding his fellow astronauts' choice. Why is this? Although money was mentioned, which may go back to an official position where being paid for appearances needed approval, it does not appear strongly linked in the language. Classified information. Information remains classified for many decades. Those with experiential memory of a historical event will have it reflected in their language. If they must conceal the information regardless of the cause of concealment, it will put them under considerable stress and will show itself in the language. This concealment will often be seen linguistically through a lack of commitment. Passivity, passive voice, as well as skipping over time is expected. This event, whether it was actual or was a military bluff, was a historic event for them. The language will reflect this. The defensive posture of the subject was already high before the journalist raised it to the point of effectively ending the interview. The origin of defensive posture and sensitivity towards the topic itself is not known here. The journalist made this into good guy versus bad guy, which hindered significantly the ability to obtain knowledge. Had the journalist challenged him without virtue signalling, we may have gotten a significant yield from Aldrin's words. For those looking to learn the truth as to whether or not the lunar landing took place, this was a lost opportunity. And interestingly, around that time, that's when Buzz Aldrin punches him in the face, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I think when he was going out of the hotel, or maybe the next day when he went back. Yeah, that's when there's this altercation, and which results in physical violence.
You really like adventure, don't you?
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Get away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.